Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depends what time zone you're in. How are you guys doing? I am really glad to see you. I know I have, I can't see you, but I'm imagining it. I know I have some of you from last time and some of you who haven't been here before. So we are going to get right into it. This webinar, the Sonrise program versus ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis, key differences. Now, keep in mind that I don't claim to be some sort of unbiased source that's just going to tick off attributes of both programs. Obviously, I'm someone who's been involved with the Sonrise program for many years. At the same time, it's given me a real insight to be able to see the differences that's between them. And I get a lot of these questions about what is the difference? What are the differences? How are they different? And as we know, ABA is the the big bad program, not bad as in not good, but the big mama, the big daddy that's most often used around this country and in other countries. I often think of sometimes the Mac PC difference as a way of illustrating it. ABA is sort of like the PC, where there's lots of different organizations and companies doing it. It's really big, but they don't all do it the same way, and it's all about it's all about volume. And the Sonrise program has a little bit more akin to Mac in terms of there's one center that disperses it all over the world, and it's a lot more relationship based and it's focused on relationships. Now, I will say this: there's some things we're going to talk about today which I think will resonate with a lot of you, and I think there's a few things that you might find, shall we say, controversial, that you might think either you don't agree with or that hasn't been your experience, and that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Everyone here is entitled to their opinions. I have a bunch of questions that I've gotten in advance that I'm going to answer, as well as you'll have an opportunity to ask questions much later on in the seminar as well. So, you guys ready? You ready to jump in? By the way, my name is Ron K. Kaufman. I'm the CEO of the Autism Treatment Center of America. I am also the first beneficiary of the Sonrise program, as I know a lot of you know. I, as you know, started out severely autistic, tested IQ of less than 30. I would spend my days just doing what you might call stimming and flapping my hands and rocking back and forth. And my parents were told that I would never speak. I would never learn to communicate in any way. They developed the Sonrise program. It enabled my complete recovery from autism. Then they started in 1983 what's now known as the Autism Treatment Center of America, this nonprofit organization in Sheffield, Massachusetts, which is where I'm speaking to you from. And what I do think is important about that backstory, I got more involved in that story in the last webinar, so I'm not going to do it now. But what is important to understand is that that is where the differences begin between applied behavioral analysis and the Sonrise program. And what I mean by that is that ABA was developed by Dr. Ivar Lovaas for clinicians. So it's developed by a doctor for clinicians. The Sonrise program was developed by parents for parents. And that's important because doctors and clinicians are invested in our children in a different way than parents are invested. And this is why we have such a strong belief in parents. This is why the way that we treat our children is so paramount in helping them to move forward and progress, not just being able to check tasks off on a list. So we're just starting from a different place. Now, what are some of these key differences? Number one, I think the starting point really to talk about is the understanding of autism, the understanding of what it is, what autism actually is. We touched on this a little bit on the last webinar, but I want to hit it from a bit of a different angle. Applied behavioral analysis treats autism as a behavioral disorder. So the idea is there are certain behaviors that they want reinforced and promoted, and there's certain behaviors that they want extinguished, that they're trying to get less of. So that's the idea. We want more of some behaviors, we want less of others. They have a whole system of rewards and other things to do that, which we're going to talk about a little later. They don't support stimming. One of the main ideas also is try and get children to do their stimming behaviors, something that we call isms. Do that as little as possible. Try and extinguish the stimming. And they have different strategies for doing that as well, which we'll talk about more as we go along. Also, there's this whole notion of correct or appropriate behaviors, which are supposed to be rewarded in different ways with food and with other items. New skills and new behaviors are then taught through a particular repetitive method called discrete trials. Now, I know some ABA people will say we don't use discrete trials anymore, but most people that is still the lingua franca of ABA in a lot of different areas. I will try and address differences, by the way, between us and all the different incarnations of ABA. Some are more traditional and some are the newer incarnations of ABA. But all of them are about as different from Sonrise as night is from day. So these are, if there's a whole spectrum of autism treatments, the Sonrise program is all the way over at one end and ABA is all the way over at the other end, and they are as different could be. So it's actually easy to really outline a lot of what makes them separate from each other. Now, the Sonrise program doesn't treat autism as a behavioral disorder. We see it as a relational disorder, a social disorder, an interactivity disorder, so that our children have difficulty creating meaningful social relationships and connections with the people around them. And again, this is true whether you have a child who is nonverbal or verbal, young or old, a child who has not yet developed most skills, or a child who has developed a lot of different skills. A child with a huge vocabulary who's been diagnosed as Asperger's syndrome, or a child who has difficulty communicating even by pointing. No matter what, there's a huge spectrum there. And we address each child by starting where that child is. That's why the Sonrise program is called a child-centered program. And that's something that we have always done. We start where the child is. However, no matter where the child is, this is their central deficit. They may behave really differently. They may act really differently. But that is a symptom. We want to address the cause, the central deficit of what's going on. So we focus on this relationship building piece. Now, what does that mean? That means we're not focused on correcting inappropriate behaviors. You know why? Because we don't believe in inappropriate behaviors. We don't even believe in the word inappropriate. How crazy is that? We actually know that these children are doing the best they can. They're doing what they're doing for a reason. This is really important. When our children are stimming, what we might call stimming, or they're doing some behavior that might look really different or unusual, they are doing that behavior for a reason. There's a good reason for why they're doing it. They're not doing it for no reason. They're not doing it to bother other people. They're doing it to take care of themselves in some crucial ways. And so we take that into consideration and we address it in that way. So we're not trying to stamp out these behaviors. We're not trying to correct what some people would call inappropriate behaviors. We seek a deeply bonded relationship. We're not focused on behavior change. We're focused on creating a deeply bonded relationship. And think about your own child, right? No matter where your child is. Isn't that what you really want? Yes, of course, you want your child to be able to go to school, or to be able to do different tasks, or depending on how old your child is, to use the toilet, or to use words. Absolutely. But don't you also want your child to really want to be with you and connect with you and want to look into your eyes and say that they love you and say that they love other people and really feel what that feels like, feel what that means? That's what we see as primary, and that's what we're trying to help our kids to do. So we see autism as this relationship, this social disorder, and we're trying to help our kids with it. And we're trying to give you tools to help your kids with it as well.